Today, we're tackling something huge, something that shapes basically everything we do. This deep, almost unquenchable thirst we all have to be seen, to be recognized by other people. But it makes you wonder, right? I mean, why? Why do we care so darn much about what other people think of us? What's this universal impulse that seems to be driving all of us? Well, to really get a handle on it, we've got to look back. Turns out, some of the greatest minds in history have been wrestling with this exact same question for centuries. And what's so wild is how our whole take on recognition has done a complete 180. You know, back in ancient Greece, thinkers like Plato were super wary of it. They called it time, or honor, and they saw it as this dangerous distraction from what really mattered, finding wisdom. Okay, so now let's jump ahead to the 18th century. Rousseau comes along and says, hold on a second. This desire for what people think of us isn't a bug, it's a feature. He argued it's born right alongside society. And that brings us right up to the 20th century, where a philosopher named Axel Honneth gives us a really solid modern way to break it all down. And Honneth's framework is just so helpful. He basically says recognition comes in three main flavors. First up, you've got love. Think about your family, your closest friends, that emotional support system that gives you your core self-confidence. Then there are rights. This is about being seen as an equal under the law, the foundation for our self-respect. And finally, there's social esteem. This is when people acknowledge your talents, what you bring to the table. That's what builds up your self-esteem. Okay, so we have these three types, but here's where it gets really interesting. Not all recognition is created equal. And to really get it, we have to pull apart two very different things, a need versus a desire. So on one hand, you have the need for recognition. This thing is primal, it's biological, it's wired into us for survival. It's that deep down drive to belong to the tribe, because being isolated historically was a death sentence. It's all about security and connection. But then, on the other hand, you have the desire for recognition. This is a totally different beast. It's social. It's about climbing the ladder, about status, about success. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving and hitting those ideals society sets up for us. So we have this philosophical split, right? Need versus desire. But what's actually going on inside our skulls? What's the biological engine driving this whole thing? Well, let's talk about the brain's reward system. And if you want to understand just how insanely powerful this system is, get this. There was this famous experiment back in the 50s. Scientists let rats push a lever to directly stimulate the reward centers in their own brains. The result? The researchers wrote, they no longer took the time to eat, stopping only from exhaustion. I mean, just let that sink in. They would literally choose that feeling over food until they collapsed. That's the raw power we're dealing with here. So yeah, that intense feeling, that comes from what we call the reward system. You can think of it as a bunch of structures in the brain that run on the neurotransmitter dopamine. It's the source of our motivation, our cravings, our pleasure, and its whole purpose in life is to make us repeat behaviors that keep us alive. And connecting with other people is absolutely on that list. Okay, so we've got the philosophy, we've got the basic brain science, but here's the million-dollar question. Can we actually see the difference between the need to belong and the desire to achieve lighting up in the human brain? Well, a recent study did exactly that. They put this whole theory to the test. So here's how they did it. Researchers put people into an fMRI machine. That's the scanner that lets you see brain activity in real time. And while they were in there, they showed them different messages aimed at promoting responsible gambling. The big idea was to see if different ways of phrasing the message would light up different brain regions. And they used two totally different approaches. The first was a personalized message. It was super direct, calling someone out by name, like, Mike, you're hiding your gambling from your family. The whole point was to make them think about themselves, to trigger some self-reflection. Then you had the normative message. This one was all about the group, saying something like, hey, most responsible gamblers only play once a week. You can be one of them. This one is clearly trying to tap into that desire to fit in, to be part of the in-group. So, the big question is, what happened in their brains? Did it work? Oh yeah, the results were incredible. They basically found two completely separate pathways lighting up, a me network and a we network. Okay, so when people saw those personal messages, the ones that were all about you, a part of the brain called the medial prefrontal cortex went into overdrive. Now, this area is like the brain's hub for thinking about yourself, your identity, your feelings. And here's the kicker. The response was way stronger in people who had more serious gambling problems. That tells us the message was really hitting a nerve on a super personal level for the people who needed to hear it most. Now for the other side of the coin. When they saw the group-focused we messages, a totally different spot lit up, the left angular gyrus. This part of the brain is all about social thinking, understanding other people, seeing things from their perspective, figuring out social rules. And get this, the people who reacted most strongly to this message were the ones who saw themselves as logical, rational people. It's like their brains were crunching the numbers, comparing their own behavior to the group average. And this is where it all clicks into place so perfectly. That desire for recognition, for individual achievement, that's wired into the brain's me network, the part that thinks about the self. And that deep biological need to belong, to fit in, that's tied directly to the we network, the part that understands our place in the group. It's amazing. Two completely different drives, two completely different pathways in the brain. Okay, that's some cool brain science, but so what? Why does any of this matter outside of a lab? Why should we care about this me versus we stuff? Well, it matters a lot. Because once you understand that these two separate drives exist, you suddenly have a much more powerful toolkit for communication. Think about it. If you're running a public health campaign, or even just trying to convince a friend of something, you now know you have two different buttons you can push. Do you frame your message to appeal to their sense of individuality, their unique self? Or do you frame it to appeal to their powerful, deep-seated need to be a part of the group? And that really brings us to the final question, one I want you to think about. Now that you know about these two powerful, competing forces inside all of us, take a second. Which one is driving you right now? Is it that fundamental need to belong, or is it that ambition, that desire to stand out and achieve?